Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to watercolor paint a landscape. This is a photograph I found on Google and I printed it off. And I have drawn very lightly, the camera might not even be able to see it, where the colors change. So right here we have the little mountain, right here we have the little tree. So that's the mountain, that's the tree. I did not draw the clouds. You don't need to draw the clouds. And I also have a border on my paper. Okay, so we have our water bucket, we have our watercolor paints. I'm gonna start off with the river. So blue. Always looking at my picture over here. It's kind of a lighter blue. So I'm going to dip my brush back in the water, make it light blue. That's still too dark. There we go, that's better. Nice light blue. We're just going to do initial color everywhere. A little bit more water. Little tiny bit more blue. Okay, now I'm going to go back with a tissue and I'm going to blot some of this to make the white reflective clouds in the water. Then I'm going to go back on the very edges and I'm going to make the very edges where the water meets the ground a little bit darker. And as it goes back, it gets a little bit darker. A few little waves here and there. Alright, then there's a little dark shadow right here cast by the tree. So I'm going to make a triangle shape. So there's my picture, there's the dark spot, so there's my dark spot. You can see it's a little bit darker around the edges of the water. Clean my brush really good. We're going to go into a nice light green. So what I'm actually going to do is in my paint palette, I'm going to get lots of green. I'm going to put it up here. Do it again. Make sure I got enough paint up there. And I'm going to add water to it. This way we get a nice lighter color green. It's not going to be as dark as what you see right there. So I'm going to paint an initial color of green everywhere. See how my brush is never getting dry? If it starts to get dry, I get either more water, more paint. Never use a dry brush. Okay, I've got an initial color of green everywhere. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to add dark greens where I see dark green. Got a nice little shadow over here. Because grass is never just one color. There's yellow and browns and tons of different green colors. To paint it just one color would make it really blah. Okay. I am going to add a little bit of brown to my green, because in the image it's got a little bit of brown in it. Doing it while it's still wet so that they're going to blend really, really well. Now I see that there is some yellow, but I'm going to have to let this dry a little bit before I put the yellow on there. So I'm going to go to the other side. The other side is mainly yellows, so I'm going to start off with a yellow instead. This time I'm not going to water it out because yellows are a very light color to begin with. We're going to not leave this whole thing yellow. We're going to go over it with oranges and browns and greens. But I'm just laying down an initial color. Okay, initial color of yellow. Now I'm cleaning my brush. While it's still wet, I want to go in there with orange. There's some nice oranges back here. That's a little bit too sharp of an orange, so I'm going to go clean my brush. Just water it down. Take my tissue, suction up some of the water that's too much. Okay, I like that much better. Just going to do the same thing again down here. Water it out. Okay. Now there's lots of greens. Okay. And we are going to add some dark greens and some light greens. I didn't want to lock you out. Right over the orange. Right at the edge of the water. And just fades back here. All the colors fade. Okay, there's a little bit of green back here. And then there's some really dark green right here. So I went straight into the source of green with no water. Okay, starting to like it. Starting to look a little bit like this. You see the green here, see the orange here. I think I'll make that a little bit more orange. We got nice yellows back here. Starting to look pretty good. Never be afraid to go back and add more color where you think you need more color. Now what I'm doing is up here I'm watering out the orange because the orange is too strong of a color. I'm mixing it into the greens so that everything mixes. I actually think I'm going to go back into the blues because I painted a little bit into my water. Crisp up the edge of that water just a little bit. Okay, now over here it's drier, so we can add the yellow on there. So there's some yellows right in here. Right down here. So the grass is not just one color. It's lots and lots of different colors. Sometimes you can see the dirt. Sometimes the grass is dying. There's lots of reasons. What I'm doing now is I just rinsed out my brush completely because I felt like the yellow was too strong. And I just went right over it with a dry, wet brush, clear water. Okay, I'm liking the ground, I'm liking the water. Now let's start with the trees. This front tree right here, I'm not going to paint just yet, and I know you can't really see it, but I'm talking about this tree right here. I'm going to paint the back trees first. And that is going to be a nice dark green color. So my palette, mixing it in, getting more water, and I'm going to have to mix in a little bit of brown to make it a nice dark color that I'm wanting. Black is going to be too strong and it's going to overpower it. So that I don't mix my brown and my green, I've completely washed my brush. Getting just a little tiny bit of brown, not much brown. I'm not swirling it in there. A little bit more and then swirl it into the paint. Oh, I like this color. Okay, it's a nice dark green color. On the screen it looks almost black. So it's just a mess of greens, and then I'm going to go back in there and add some brown sticks once it's dried a little bit. Watercolor paint is about painting lots of layers. Go. That's our first layer. I'm going to go right over here to the other side. There's a nice big tree right there. Bring those down past the horizon line. I'm going to go back, bring these down over the grass a little bit more. Okay, we're going to let that dry just a little bit. I'm going to go back in here and add a little bit more brown, because right here you can see that it's a little bit more brown than I have. I'm going to make it a little bit darker too. So straight into the brown, right underneath. Green, maybe even use our dark green. There we go, much better. We're always working all over. You can let areas dry so you can go back and work on them again. Now I want to do just some streaks. Let's make it a little bit darker. This is just going to give us different tones for our trees, so it doesn't look like a big green mass. And I'm going to go back with a lighter green on top of that. Now we're starting to get a little bit more tree-like area. Now see, this is still a little too wet, so I'm only going into the dry parts. Okay, now I'm going to do that big tree that was right there in the center. I'm going to go straight into the brown. No mixing, get a lot of it on the brush. We're going to start with the tree trunk. It's above the trees and pull it down. It starts to get a little bit wider, so you push the brush in a little bit more. And there's tree branches everywhere. This is where you get to have fun. You just let it be loose branches. If you hold the brush lightly, you're going to get nice small branches. You can do some branches off of the branches that you already drew. Okay. Now with this brown still on the brush, I'm going to add a little bit of black to it. That's to make this really dark mountain range right back here while that dries, because I can't go and put green on it just yet. Very, very little black. Black is a very strong color. Here we go. And then it's just, this one is a nice flat line. But it's important that we put it in there. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more black just at the top. Now, while we're waiting for the rest of that to dry, I'm going to do an initial coat of blue for the sky. Wash my brush really thoroughly. Some nice blue at the top. It's nice and dark. So I'm going to start at the top with my dark, dark color. And as it comes down, it starts to get lighter. So I'm not going to go back in the color anymore. Now I'm just going to get clean water on my brush to make it go lighter. Don't worry about the clouds for now. I have a fun technique to show you how to make the clouds. Okay, and as it comes down, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Oh no, my mountains. They weren't quite dry enough. Okay, so to make clouds, we're going to push this into the watercolor paint while it's still wet. If you hold it a little bit longer, it's going to absorb a little bit more. Always go back, suction some up. But you got to do this while it's still wet. You can't let it dry. You can also completely clean your brush. Put it in there. Suction it up again. Do it as many times as you feel like you need it. Because there is no white. There we go. I really like those clouds. Okay, we just need to finish off the trees. So I'm going to go in there with a nice green, bright green. More time over all of it. Back here too. Okay, now I'm going to add leaves to this one. I'm just going to do little dots. A little more water. A little dot representing all the little leaves. And there's also a little shadow right down here. I'm going to make this a little darker here too. There we go. A little bit more. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of brown into my clusters of trees in the back. Straight brown. I barely use the very tip of the brush. Just so it looks like there are some tree trunks in there. Alright, and we are all done.